Yay! Second commentary styled video. Woo! So, for as long as I've been doing digital art, which would be for the past 5 or 6 years, my color sense has been complimented most. While I've always appreciated that, I don't really know how to explain it to those who might have been curious about it. It's mostly come from a mix of learning color fundamentals in school and college, observing the work of artists online, and simply experimenting with colors on my own time. I will preface, this video is not at all about color theory or those fundamentals as much as it's about my personal approach and knowledge when it comes to using color in my artwork. Regardless of that, I do hope you come away from this video less intimidated to try different colors and schemes in your own work. Art should be fun, especially when learning it. Some strain is necessary for your growth, but if it becomes an entirely unmotivating process for you, that's no good. With that, let's begin. My personal process for choosing colors can be broken down into 3 simpler aspects depending on the art piece. There is thematic appropriateness, emphasis, and inspiration. I like to keep the baseline or foundation simple and clean since I tend to be more expressive with how I arrive at an end result and don't always have a consistent method I use to get there. Any inspiring art or art methods also tend to sway the look of my pieces quite a bit depending on what comes up while I'm working on anything at any given moment or time. Before I get too lost in the weeds, gradient maps and blend modes in Procreate also go a long way as they help me progress when I get stuck on how I want to continue detailing or coloring a piece. Now, the rest of this video is likely going to be more off the cuff, more just me talking and blabbering essentially over speed paints and images of my art. But I still do hope that you can glean something important, maybe a bit freeing in how you approach colors and texturing stuff in your own work. But yeah, so thank you for watching and we're going to get into it right now. Alright, and on to the first piece, Sonic Cross Worlds, Cross Hearts. I made this piece in August of this year to celebrate the upcoming release of the title Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, and to specifically celebrate the return of the extreme gear from the dormant Sonic Riders series. My process of both aligning and coloring this piece were more structured than usual, but nevertheless it still adhered to the 3 aspects of my process as I've listed. Starting on thematic appropriateness, it's Sonic. Most people think of this series and its characters and many locations in these vibrant and captivating, usually very saturated and sometimes patterned colors. To have this art piece be anything less would be an insult as an artist and a longtime fan of the series. I also wanted to depict both Sonic and Amy in more vibrant and colorful hyper and super forms respectfully as a result, so I could sneak some rainbows and other captivating elements onto them, while staying in line with the series' brand of vibrant visuals and helping them stand out in this very colorful piece more. Speaking of standing out, coming to emphasis, considering this piece would likely have a lot of colors with it, I wanted to make sure neither Amy or Sonic got lost with the background of water and Crossworlds rings I had drawn. The super forms and the light auras around them were as much as a fan-led idea as much as they were a necessary one to make sure nothing got lost or smothered by the background. They likely would have been fine without them, but I digress. Ironically, in that way, I did end up just turning the background into some sort of gradient with the rings still present by accident, but it still worked out. The main inspirations for how the piece looks, though, and some of its elements, were the first opening cutscene of Sonic Riders with the characters riding down a ravine, riding from some rushing water, as well as the menu screens of both the original game and its sequel, Zero Gravity. They informed the colors and checkerboard detailing the piece possesses. The blues I chose, the white checkerboards, or the, lowered opacity, almost white checkered boards, the grid detailing in the rings, and what I did originally have in the background of the piece, the wrapped rainbow text, and the like were all to emanate the Y2K future fantasy these games of that era released with, and to also help better focus Sonic and Amy in the frame of what I had drawn. When coloring, especially established franchises, I keep the energy and aesthetic of whatever I am depicting in mind. It can help make choosing colors a lot easier and help bring to mind elements that could be included to make the piece look better or better frame what you're going for. On to the second art piece I'll be speaking about my coloring process on. This is a Legend of Zelda computer spring themed wallpaper. On my Ko-fi, I've made and am currently selling themed wallpapers set to the 4 seasons. I finished all of them, excluding spring, and wanted to get started on the PC wallpaper for that pack. Considering I don't depict medieval fantasy often in my art, I thought it'd be fun to make something that included the Legend of Zelda series and try my hand at depicting aspects of it that can be whimsical. So, going to thematic appropriateness. Considering that this would be a spring-themed piece, an emphasis on greens and blues with a couple of rainbow-like flowers was a must-have. I also wanted to emphasize the toonier side of the series like Wind Waker or the recent top-down Zeldas that have that almost Claire diorama-like look, like the Link's Awakening remake, with Echoes of Wisdom, Zelda's current title. This is very similar to the Sonic piece as both are very colorful. In fact, all of the art in this video kind of maintains like that colorful, saturated kind of thing. But fortunately, most of the emphasis would be on the foreground of this piece, not any background element. So, as on emphasis, considering that it isn't uncommon for Link to have some sort of musical instrument to help guide him through puzzles or difficult situations, I wanted to include the ocarina, most iconic to that series. With that came the idea to draw light musical instrumental lines, or white instrumental lines, that centered him and helped cut through the rainbow colors of the piece. I also included Epona and some little Koroks around him to further that. The Koroks do blend more into the piece, considering that they have a green and brown that just works well with the main foreground. However, Epona stands out in her almost kind of like reddish brown coat, which helps direct her a little closer to Link a little more and helps put some more emphasis on like where they're sitting in the grass. As for my inspirations, at some point during the earlier phases of this art piece, I struggled on how to detail more of it. I used gradient maps to add colors and lighting and shadow, experimenting with that a little bit, but it just never looked right. However, I found a YouTube short of a creator treating their digital art like a coloring book, making use of Procreates, or even in adjacent softwares I can't entirely remember, pencil brush to finish their work. I liked what I saw and felt that it fit what I'd already scribbled out, so I took the chance to draw spirals of various yellow and blue leaning greens in the trees, tried different reds for the bark, and dot different rainbow colors around to act as mock flowers. It helped to make the piece feel cute, beautiful, and cozy. I did something similar, messing with Link himself, his shading and shadow, added some more detailing to his hair a little bit, just to help it, reflect that coziness that some of those titles that I've aforementioned had. This is a reminder, actually, to just do fun stuff with your art, especially ones you are dragging your feet on or just frustrated with. It can help bring back the whimsy even when you're tired or art just isn't feeling as fun to you anymore. Alright, and last but not least, we have the last art piece here that I like to call Skyfish Baited. This art piece was partially inspired by the still in progress indie game, The Big Catch. I mistakenly thought the Blackbird character was a rabbit and ended up drawing an OC based off of that, not realizing it. But on thematic appropriateness, considering that the scenario I'd be depicting was more cartoony and silly, colors, once again, saturated and fun to match it. This was a more tropical setting, so of course lots more greens and blues due to being on the water and in nature. Very akin to the Zelda piece that we just went over. It's a bit more fantastical as well, so you can have a bit more fun like detailing the background and its elements, adding like cute little like stars and lines and wispy bits to just kind of give the environment the same personality and character that you want your actual characters and interacting figures in the art to actually have. The main character, showing this environment, however, the black rabbit and the yellow vest on the character-shaped board would have colors contrasting the world that they were placed in to make that disruptive nature more evident. I like remembering that colors are meant to tell a story and imply things about both the world and characters they are in. Whenever that's important in a piece for me, I make sure that the colors help to do that well. Now, mentioning the black rabbit, but focusing on the giant fish with the wings that has unfortunately been caught, this is kind of where our emphasis comes in, or my approach to emphasizing in colors, because as you can tell, the fish itself is very blue, but a deep blue than the lighter sky, as so it doesn't blend into it. However, one of its wings kind of does, like its left wing's kind of like in the air more, kind of blends into the sky, but the right wing being like full width, full mass, just face down, helps to like complete the suggestion of the other wing, even if it's not as perfectly in frame as the right one is. Speaking of that, elements in the background or foreground that are deemed unimportant are made lighter in general, but if they specifically meet the skyline of the piece, then their colors are altered to blend in with it, to have some of those same lighter blues and whites, where their form is still evident, but your eye may not immediately run to them or might just disregard them. A notable example would be the lighthouse and tree in the background being more of a blue. And there is like a little crab in the foreground who's getting just surrounded by all the action and is a different color from everything else, just like the rabbit character is. However, the little guy is still lighter than everything else, like his colors are a little washed out, as to not draw too much attention. Now, a major inspiration for completing this piece to me was Kirby, knowing how in those games that they tend to detail the sky and the dirt in the ground with different like stars and patterns and lines and all this cool stuff to just add a bit more visual interest and personality to the worlds you're adventuring in. I wanted to do the same with this piece, flesh it out, make it more fun, and just motivate myself a bit more to finish it out. Alright, with that, we've gone over all of the art pieces that I wanted to apply my art principles of thematic appropriateness, emphasis, and inspiration to. However, I do have these three honorable mentions I kind of wanted to expand on the process of a little bit. This Mega Dragonite piece to the far left here is more a representative of thematic appropriateness, considering that I wanted a more like dreamy and colorful art piece to both represent Mega Evolution, but also just how fluffy and fun and cute I personally think Dragonite is as a Pokemon in general. I do feel like the Rosalina, or the Cosmic Spirit drawing of Rosalina in the middle here is best representative of emphasis, especially considering that this character uses a lot of monochromatic colors, a lot of blues and varying values and hues of blue, and so it would be very hard to get a lot of detail out of her, largely due to all of those blues. But I still worked to make sure that things like the face and sleeves and where you want to be looking are a little lighter than what, say, the hands when they were dressed, that isn't as important, just to make sure that I'm still honoring the depiction of the character while also make sure that there was clarity in the features and what you're supposed to be seeing. But finally, the final piece off to the farther right here, the Undertale 10th anniversary mural piece that I made as for inspiration. Well, that inspiration simply came from the games themselves. Considering that Deltarune takes, even if it's not Deltarune's 10th anniversary, not yet anyway, the fact that that game deals with a darkness that Undertale ultimately doesn't, made the dark light contrast in the poster a lot more fun to engage with. I also was able to almost make it card-like or tarot-like, without really even thinking about doing it that way. But kind of looking at how Deltarune and Underdog are kind of flip sides of each other, the contrast between the cold Deltarune side and the warm and friendly Undertale side, both with friendly and kind characters, but ultimately with much different vibes and tones. It helped just make a lot of decisions about how I chose to split colors amongst the art piece and try to depict that parallel but opposite nature in that work. But yeah, so that would basically be the end of that whole segment. We've just gone over thematic appropriateness, emphasis, inspiration in my artwork. And I guess while we're just letting these videos finish up and tick down, I would encourage you to reflect on what you've learned and what you've observed here, and if that's helped or will help your artistic journey or process in any way. All right, so we have essentially reached the end of the video. Thank you for going over my process with me with thematic appropriateness, emphasis, and inspiration. And I guess my parting message to you is just hoping that, hey, have fun with your work. Try to not make everything so serious, otherwise you will get blocked and it will be a much more miserable process learning for you. Have fun, keep it light, and just find your own thrill in making stuff. All right, thanks. Bye.